Welcome to another episode of Inside Startup Investing. As always, I am your host, Chris Lustrino, founder and CEO of KingsCrowd. Inside Startup Investing is a #1 podcast for learning about the best startups and investors in the online private markets. If you are a startup investor, this is a show for you. This podcast is powered by KingsCrowd's proprietary rating technology that helps us to uncover the best founders and stories that you need to hear about before clicking invest. Now, before we get started, we want to thank our sponsor, LawCloud, the premier solution for founders to prepare to raise capital online. Whether you need to file a Form C, a Form 1A, or a subscription agreement, LawCloud provides the lowest cost, easiest to use toolkit for founders to make raising capital online easier than ever. Now, on to today's show. And today I am joined by Manish Kapoor, who is the founder and CEO of TruKno, which is a really interesting company in the cybersecurity space. So let's hop in. Manish, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Hi, Chris. Nice to be here with you.
Nice to be here with you as well. So to start off, tell me a little bit about your background, and then I'd love to hear kind of the one-liner for TruKno.
Sure. So my background, I'm born and raised in India, have been in the United States since 1994, went to high school, then University CU Boulder, and then I've been in the corporate world for 20 years. And then a few years ago, decided to go solve a problem, and I'll describe that later on today, and left Cisco and have been working on TruKno for the last few years.
Wow, very, very cool. So let's hop in. Cybersecurity, probably an area for a lot of us is an unknown. We don't understand it very well. So we're definitely gonna break it down here. But tell us exactly what TruKno is.
Yeah, TruKno is a advanced threat intelligence and detection and hunting platform. What that means is, even if all the enterprises, have spent so much money on cybersecurity, despite of all of that, day in, day out, you hear about cyber breaches, right? And what that means is, in cybersecurity, we call adversaries, it's a fancy word for hackers, that they are finding net new ways to bypass enterprise security controls, right? Even with all the money and technologies. That's what TruKno does, is we capture all that context of how the latest attacks are happening and use that information. And we use, algorithms to find that and aggregate that and make it useful for the enterprises so they can proactively defend their networks against these new threats, right? That is the bottom line, is learn from new breaches and attacks so the next enterprise can prevent better and faster and easier.
To make sure I understand, is it almost like you're using, if you have all of your customers, right, and each one of them might have a hacker trying to hack them in a different way, you're actually collecting all that information and then utilizing that to help each organization see more potential attacks, understand what they look like, and prevent them before they happen?
We do that. And the key difference here is we're not just looking at our customer base. We're looking at across the globe all the latest cyber attacks being reported by governments, vendors, organizations that are responsible for cybersecurity across the globe. And they're all reporting the latest types of attacks. How are the attackers attacking you? So all this information exists, but the key is it's so overwhelming amount of information. We take all that information. So it's not just taking our customer data, is taking all the data about the latest cyber attacks and then contextualizing it and delivering it in the context of our customer, what assets they have, what technology they have, what industry they have, so they can see, hey, what poses the highest threats to them based upon all that, and then they can take proactive measures.
Understood. And is it providing recommendations on how to protect themselves, or is it kind of just giving them the guidebook of, hey, here are the threats you need to most prevent yourself from getting attacked by?
It's actually both. So we will give them details on, here are the latest attacks that are targeted your industry, your technology, and here are actual detection rules that you can proactively put within your network that will prevent anything like this happening to you. So it's take that information on latest threats and turn it into proactive detection rules that these enterprises can deploy.
Now, I'm curious, do you have, over kind of the first few years of having this deployed in the market, any stories of folks kind of getting these early warnings saying, here's the biggest threats posed to you, and then they put something in place, and then that threat or attack actually happens, and they were able to prevent it?
I'll give you again, based upon can't share customer names and so forth, I'll give you an example that talks about how this could be useful. There was a breach in a very big, actually, funny enough, it was a very famous cybersecurity training company. They got breached, and they said, "Hey, we got breached, and we want to be completely open about what happened with the breach." And they actually presented a webinar about. They're not a customer of ours, but it will make the point on this topic. They said, "Hey, we got breached by this brand new technique never seen before, and that's why we couldn't protect against it." And as I was listening to that webinar, and I was thinking to myself, hey, you are not aware of this technique or this threat doesn't mean it actually did not exist. Your team was not aware of it. And we actually have 6 confirmed historical breaches using this same attack technique that you are saying is never seen before. So that's where enterprises, if they're not aware of these techniques, it doesn't mean it has not happened. So it's the key is to keep up with these things and take proactive measures. If they actually had our platform, they would have seen that particular type of attack could be a potential risk to them, and they could have taken steps behind it.
So you're the guidebook to preventing these major attacks that can really, there's been so many of them, to your point, even in the news over the last year and a half. There was a Colonial Pipeline one, right? There's been some really big breaches. There's obviously a ton of cybersecurity companies out there. It appears to be a crowded space from an outsider who doesn't know that much about the industry. But talk to us, is there anyone else doing what you're doing? Are you kind of in a unique position of being the guidebook rather than another tool to implement cybersecurity management?
Yeah, I think what happens is if you look at the space currently, most threat intelligence and hunting platforms, what they will do, Chris, is in the world of cybersecurity, again, what happens is we call adversaries. We say, hey, this adversary is known to use, if you're following, let's say, if you're in the finance industry and says, hey, I am worried about these 5 type of hackers, right? These 5 names per se. We call them adversaries. And so these threat intelligence platform will tell you, competitive platform will tell you, here are the 150 different techniques this attacker has used in the past. That's what these platforms give to you today. And the enterprise like, okay, that's interesting. And so we'll figure out how to prioritize these 150. What we turned that question into a completely different. We said, hey, that's interesting, but that's not the whole story. We want to see how are these attackers trying to bypass your security controls. So we asked that question almost 2 years ago. What should we do to figure that out for our enterprises? And we found 3 different ways these adversary / attackers / hackers are trying to bypass enterprise security controls. And we focus on what are the net new attack sequences. So it's not just, hey, they will take one technique and attack you. They take a whole new sequence that bypasses your secret control. That's the first way they bypass. And the second way is, hey, they will take all the ways, turn it into a completely new way that the newer security controls are not able to find. We capture those. And then they have brand new ways they're attacking you that, again, some of these tools, competitive tools, do not track. So these 3 things are completely unique to TruKno. And that's the fundamental reason, even as a small startup, we're getting traction with some very, very large enterprise customers, some of the biggest organizations in the world.
I feel like you're leading me right into my next question, which is, let's talk about what your customer base looks like. Obviously, you can't provide names, but can you provide, industry, size, that type of information?
Yes, absolutely. To be honest with you, as a startup founder, my perception going into it was that, hey, because we are a smaller startup, We will have small to medium-sized customers because, the bigger guys might not be open to small startups. It has been the complete opposite reality. Most of our customers tend to be larger size enterprises. And the reality is companies who actually have the resources to proactively take these kind of steps and get context, they tend to have more resources, dedicated resources like threat hunting resources, threat and analyst resources. Those are the companies that they tend to use us. And they so far, again, not by design, just happens to be, tend to be in the finance sector, insurance sector, commercial real estate sector, and big cloud providers as well. So those are the type of customers we are in production with and we're trials with.
In terms of the sales process, you mentioned something that I thought is interesting and worth highlighting. When you're selling into these big organizations, I mean, sometimes, there could be the RFP process, right? Which could take a year for them to basically pick their preferred vendor, and you have to follow all these rules. And it could be a very, very laborious process to be able to sell into these big organizations. And I'd imagine with cybersecurity, they're even more careful. But what does the sales cycle look like for you? And as you think about your pipeline and what you have there today, how fast do you think you can scale this within that sales process?
Absolutely. You hit the nail in the head. If you're trying to win a deal at a very large enterprise, which requires API integrations, as well as if any of their data needs to be in your platform, it's a huge, long, drawn-out process, RFPs, as well as vendor compliance reviews and all that. So we are very aware of that. I actually spent 10 years at Cisco Systems selling to these kind of enterprises, so we knew some of those hurdles. So what we have done is, in order to overcome this challenge, we have built a two-pronged kind of a solution / a process. Enterprises can start to gain value from our platform just in a traditional SaaS dashboard, where they're able to set up saying, hey, I have these types of assets. I have I'm of course in this industry. I'm able to customize the top things that I should be aware of without any integration, without any information from them coming into our platform. So this allows them to actually even buy the product within the 30 days right after trials. And then there are other enterprises who do want to go through that very detailed integration. Frankly, that's where it takes anywhere from 3 to 6 months. So we are trying to find that balance of winning deals faster, where they can find value even before they do API integration. And we actually had some success with it. But some of these large enterprises, we did go through several months of integration and cycle, but they really help you get your product right, especially in the early stages. So it was really worth it.
Nice. And what is the pricing model for your solution?
It's a typical SaaS model in terms of annual recurring ARR based upon the size of the enterprise, based the number of users that will be using our SaaS dashboard. And then there's API integrations, how many API calls they make or API integrations they want. So it's a annual recurring revenue based upon the size and the technicality of their user base and their API integrations.
And at this point, would you say that you have product market fit? And then I'd love to hear some feedback that maybe you've received from customers around why it's really providing value to them.
Yes. I would say we are getting better and better at product market fit. That means is we were originally going after, again, as a startup, we don't really know what exactly use cases. We have a problem we're trying to solve, and you're trying to find that product market fit and the right use cases. Right now, we are getting closer and closer to that product market fit because there are 2 or 3 specific use cases. It's the customers who have bought, it's the same exact use cases they are buying for. And that actually helps us refine that further. So it's a cycle, right? You get one use case starts to work and a big customer works with you and gets even better. So the next customer who says, oh, it looks like you have actually done a lot with this use case. So I would say we have about 2 use cases that we feel good product market fit with. And there are a couple other use cases. We're still dabbling with some trials to see if that really makes a long-term scaling and a product fit for broader use cases.
Understood. And at this time, can you dive in a little bit and just tell us what your team looks like? Obviously, this is a very high-end technology from what I could gather here. So I would imagine it's a lot of tech staff. But yeah, what does the team construct look like today?
Yes, the team consists of about 10 to 12 people, depending on full-time, part-time. The most important and the differentiation of our team is the diversity of our team, from the skill set all the way to background. So most of the team has the beautiful part is it's a people. Myself, I have a technical background, but technical sales, selling high-end security solutions to enterprises coming from Cisco systems. But the rest of the team has experience in developing large and SaaS platforms, AI, very detailed threat detection and analysis capability, front end, back end. So that diversity of the skill set is one of the most important things that is working for us. And then also personal background. Between us, we are literally across 4 continents and 6 countries and speak 11 languages between us. And there are half of them are men, half of them are women. So between all those things, we feel really blessed to have the level of diversity in skill set as well as personal background that makes us, click together.
You're raising capital right now. Where will those capital funds be deployed to help grow the business?
One of the so 2 places we'll be focusing our capital raise use of funds for. One is, as we are winning some of these large enterprise customers, they frankly bring us to our knees in terms of new feature requests. They really push us hard to go faster and more advanced capabilities. So to just win new deals and to keep our current customers happy, we are working on some very advanced use cases. So part of that use of funds will be to grow our software engineering team to keep up with that demand. And the second one is go-to-market. That means since the current team stack is more technically focused, we need to build a little bit more of a sales and marketing team, because that's where we are short on staff. Everybody else is technical in the team. So I think that's where we think that putting some dedicated resources on the go-to-market sales and marketing, and especially some partnership BDM people, because in cybersecurity, it's all about ecosystems. People don't just buy a product; they buy it as part of an ecosystem through a system through a distribution channel that already exists, and that's where we want to build some partnerships. So it's the balance between new feature with software programmers and some go-to-market. That's where we want to focus this use of funds for.
Yeah, you made a really interesting comment that I want to hit on. So you talked about, these customers asking for more features and capabilities and customizations, which to me, as a business person, get excited on the front of stickiness of the product, right? The more you're kind of ingratiating the way that you do cybersecurity, the more likely you are to kind of stick with that service. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about stickiness of the product. And the second thing that I'd love to hear more about is there an opportunity in doing these things to create the upsell opportunity, right? Because a repeat customer and a customer that increases how much they're spending with you is better than a new customer. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing, talking about that new feature request, right? As a founder, to be honest with you, we have to be very careful. We cannot, especially at this early stage, do one-off feature requests, right? If one customer says, it happens to be a big customer, but says, can you do this for us? We always look through the lens of saying, hey, can this feature be used by 15 other customers? That's what we want to prioritize. We try to triangulate that with 5 other customers to make sure, because we only have limited resources, that's the first thing we'll do is make sure we're not building a feature or something important for just one customer. So that's very important. Second thing is stickiness. As these customers guide us on these new features and we triangulate and we make it does make sense. What happens is they are constantly asking us to deliver more efficiencies to them. For example, they're saying, hey, we were using, some of these customers started off saying, hey, we are using your intelligence data and writing some detection rules. Can you take some of the data we're getting? We're instead of us writing that from scratch, can you actually give us some base level of detection rules? We will always need to customize it for our own needs, the last 20%, but it will be huge efficiencies if you can give us some base detection rules. So, and they're willing to pay for it. So listening to those kind of requests, because in that request is a opportunity to upsell. They're like, hey, yeah, we love your data, we love your information, but if you can take a next step a little bit further towards it, will mean significant efficiencies to our team. And by the way, we're willing to pay for it because it will save us significant amount of our own resources. So that is the key. Do whatever you want to build the next, that it will scale for multiple customers, and do it in the way that will actually allow you to gain more revenue, not just keep adding features for the same revenue.
You talked a little bit about this kind of ecosystem play, right? In cybersecurity, you're not just buying the one-off, but you want a suite of things that you're utilizing, which I think is one of the reasons why cyber has had such a high level of acquisition activity, where companies in the cyberspace are buying up other companies. So as you think about exit, obviously as a founder, you always have to think about all of the options, but are there some interesting acquisitions to use kind of as comps of things that could happen for a business like yours?
We're actually thinking about this from the very beginning. The important part is, no matter what you do in cybersecurity, no matter which part of cybersecurity a vendor is in, every part of cybersecurity needs to have the latest threat intelligence, because if you do not have that, it doesn't, it's hard to build a good trust security product if you don't have the right type of intelligence, as well as detections. So our product naturally needs to have an ecosystem in terms of integration with SIM vendors, with EDR vendors, with other kinds of platforms, log management vendors, and so forth. So the beautiful thing is, as we are building those integrations, it's a very natural fit for some of these providers over the long term to see, hey, we are actually doing this integration and we have a common customer base, that at some point it does make sense for us to just acquire this company, because we can see many of our customers are using their information with integration with their own platform. So that's how we're building our own partnerships as part of integration, because at some point we think will look very attractive to some of these vendors to just acquire us, and because we have such a common customer base, and it's a complementary to their own product.
You're raising capital right now. For those who are listening, what's kind of your last pitch? If they're on the fence, what would you tell them?
First of all, I will say is starting with cyber is a great space to be in as a startup. It means we've seen, all of us have heard about all kinds of breaches and threats. And trust me, as the world economy gets even more digitized, it's only going to get more critical and more critical. It already is such a critical part of the equation for enterprises as well as businesses. It will get even more critical over time. So we're in the right space, and especially with the ability to automate, to understand and detect latest threats is a hot field. If you look at the market forecast, it's going to actually go 4 times over the next 10 years. It's going to grow by 400%. So it's a very growing field, and leveraging some of the new AI tools is making it even more lucrative. So we think we are at the right place at the right time to take advantage of it, and we'll love to have them join us on our journey.
Terrific. And last question for you here. You came from a huge company. You're working at Cisco. You've become an entrepreneur, taking something from nothing to hopefully, a very large company. You're a startup. Tell me about
one of the greatest challenges that maybe you didn't expect going into this journey that you've experienced being a founder now for the past few years?
One of the biggest challenge as a founder you deal with is it's all about finding right people. And it is, especially as an early stage, because you don't have a lot of capital to give in terms of big salaries and so forth. So you have to really find people who are passionate for the problem you're solving or the solution you're building. So I would say if you're a founder or thinking of being a founder, your number one job is to find the right people. And that right people is not just your team, but it's also your early customers. It's also your early partners. It's also your early investors, because they truly have to believe in you and the problem you're solving and the way you're solving it, because there are many, many ups and downs you will go through and uncertainties you will go through. So having the right people in all of these categories, from team to partners to customers, because they need to guide you from the very beginning, till you are more in a, until you find the product market fit. And it is hard to find that, find those good people in every one of those stages, because you meet so many people, but finding that chemistry and fit is so critical. And that's the number one advice I would do is and we actually have a word for it within our team. We call it big people, brilliantly intelligent, but genuinely good as well. So big, BIGG, brilliantly intelligent and genuinely good. You want these people on your side from the very beginning.
Well, I couldn't have said it better myself. Love the acronym. And Manish, it's been an absolute pleasure to meet you today, spend some time learning more about your business. TruKno is a really, really interesting investment opportunity. You can go check them out. And thank you so very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for listening to the show. If you want to use the same tools I do to find amazing founders like the ones I have on the show to power your investment decisions, you can head on over to kingscrowd.com/startups to try out our Edge Pro Toolkit for 30 days free. And of course, like and subscribe us on your favorite podcast platform.